Okay, I see the thumbs up. Good evening, everyone. We will call our council meeting of May the 17th to order at exactly 6 o'clock. Once again, I would ask all participants to please keep themselves on mute unless, of course, you're talking, and then we have to try to remember to take ourselves off mute. I have no announcements. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest among members of council with any of the issues before us tonight? Seeing none. Additions or deletions to the agenda. I have one. I would, under other matters, I would like Greg to inform members of council about a board position he was recently appointed to. We put that under other matters. Is there anybody else got anything you would like to add or subtract from our agenda tonight? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, just through the mayor, either you, Joe, or Greg, just a bit of an update to other council and staff about EORN and the meeting that we sat in on, I guess about a week ago.
Okay, we'll provide an update if we can under other matters. Sure. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Seeing none, then I would like a motion, please, to adopt the agenda as amended. Deputy Clerk, Councillor Howie, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. All right, moving down the agenda all the way to number 8, we have one delegation with us tonight, and that's Chris Kowalik, who is going to give us some information on a community safety and well-being plan. Good evening, Chris. Good to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and thank you to council. I'm going to give a shot here to share my screen. And hopefully you see this, the presentation.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So, hit the wrong key here. Thank you again for having me to provide some background information on the development of a community safety and well-being plan for the city and the county and all 8 townships. I'm happy to have Heather on the advisory committee for this project representing your municipality. We had our first advisory committee on Friday and got a good start. The requirement for having a community safety and well-being plan came in the end of 2018 and right at the beginning of 2019, where the province made amendment to the Police Services Act to require all municipalities to have a community safety and well-being plan. The new deadline is July 1st. The old deadline was January 1st of this year. And I'll get to the timing of that and the challenges that is posing. A couple of things to keep in mind. 2 of the specific things that the province requires is that we create a representative advisory committee, which we have, and engage in broad community consultations, which we will be doing in the near future. I've taken this quote about community safety and well-being planning right out of the province's guidelines. And it gives a good explanation saying that it involves taking an integrated approach to service delivery by working across a wide range of sectors, agencies, and organizations, including but not limited to local government, police services, health, mental health, education, social services, and community and custodial services, children and youth, which we do have on our advisory committee and more, to proactively develop and implement evidence-based strategies and programs to address local priorities. And they give some examples, and I'll have more around risk factors, looking at vulnerable groups and protective factors and these related to crime and complex social issues in a sustainable basis. The province has broken down the sort of levels of intervention that they would like to see addressed in a plan, and they're reflected in these three categories around social development, prevention, risk intervention, and emergency response. The social development side is really looking more at some of the root causes of social issues. That's where we're talking about poverty, homelessness, mental health issues, and developing cross-sectoral partnerships and policies and programs to address those. We have them, but this plan is going to try to force us to look at it in a different way and be more creative. On the prevention side, applies to strategies about known risks that are likely to result in harm to folks. And then the risk intervention area is identifying and responding to situations of acutely elevated risk. I think one of the examples here would be things like situation tables that work with someone who is, really hit hard times and struggling and about to fall into crisis if they don't have multiple agencies addressing their multiple issues. And certainly on the emergency response side, that is when we're talking about emergency services, mostly thinking of police, EMS, and fire. But it also relates to when you're thinking of the Children's Aid Society as an example, when they have to say remove a child from a home, that has a serious safety and well-being effect on that child and the family. So that type of scenario also falls within this type of emergency response. And on a less serious nature, having a child expelled from school is emergency response in relation to this plan, that nobody wants children to miss school or be in situations and the behavior that causes that, but what are the underlying causes for that behavior, and working with the families and the child to see what those are. And that, relates more to the prevention and social development side. Community safety and well-being plan must include local risk factors that have been identified based on community consultation and multiple sources of data, evidence-based programs and strategies to address those priority risk factors, and measurable outcomes with associated performance measures. I think that's some standard things when you're developing most plans. I've listed and I've provided a few examples of some other municipalities who have completed their community safety and well-being plans. I'm not going to go through all these, but they can be as very high level as what you see in Thunder Bay and the region of Niagara, when you say, okay, addictions and substance misuse, affordable housing, mental health, poverty, homelessness, looking at strong neighborhoods, safe women and children. So these municipalities have actions and strategies that have been endorsed by their advisory committee, and with multiple organizations agreeing to work on them collectively. When you look at something like Prince Edward County, which would have a little bit more of a parallel to county issues, they're these aren't in any particular order, but the first one they list is, around having first responders reach their destinations quicker and safer. That's always been a real issue. In my past, I was involved with setting up the civic addressing systems in multiple counties across the province. So I've talked to a lot of emergency services in that regard. So, and on the rural side for Prince Edward County, they've identified a lot of issues with seniors around elder abuse and fraud, mobility, and isolation. So these are just to give you the flavor of some of the things that will likely show up in our community safety and well-being plan. At the end of last year, Council did give approval to hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer to help work on this plan, and also develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. We have hired that person, Reem Ali. I'm not sure if some of you may know her. She'd worked for the New Canadian Centre and was their interim executive director at the Sexual Assault Center, and she'll be joining us soon. It was back in February of last year that the CAO of Asphodel Norwood pulled everybody together, this group, you know, the city, county, all the townships, public health, city police, OPP, EMS, talk about how we could move this plan forward and decide if we were going to work on this collaboratively. And at the time, that's when that decision got made. I had started working on an RFP to hire a consultant to do some of the background research and to start developing a strategy for the consultation process. And it was at that time that the pandemic hit. I got redeployed and none of the municipalities really did any work, and it really went on the back burner. We knew at the time in February that, you know, we were going to be hard pressed even to meet that January 1st deadline. And it was a few months ago, the province extended the deadline to July 1st. For us, nothing really changed. Those extra 6 months really didn't have an impact because we've been still dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic, and agencies that are around the table for the advisory committee are really still struggling to deliver service in a new way, isolated and, you know, virtually, and they're still struggling to take on new things like this advisory committee. But I should mention, I'm not going to go through this, but where the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan will include these aspects. I don't want to get too bogged down on this, but I thought I'd provide that to you since Reem Ali will be working on that with you. One slide I thought that was in there, which is not, but our plan is to have an interim report prepared for the July 1st deadline, a high-level report, not asking councils to make any commitments to any actions. It will be more the broad priorities. We're going to base it on the well-being plan that we developed and received in 2019. And the advisory committee is providing feedback on that as we speak, actually. So that is the report that I'll be bringing to your council in June, so that we can submit that to the Ministry of Solicitor General as showing progress, and that our intention is to submit a full plan on January 1st, 2022. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. I know a community safety and well-being plan, or because we love our acronyms, CSWP, is something that we've discussed locally at our Township Police Service Board meetings for quite some time. And I think Heather Scott, our clerk, has been working on one. I believe the purpose of this presentation tonight, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, is just to inform members of council about what a community safety well-being plan is, what some of the structure of it could look and the content could look like, and to get ready because there is one coming soon to a community near you. Is that correct?
Yes, I offered it to all the townships if they wanted me to provide a background presentation in advance of the June one, where I am going to be asking you to endorse that interim plan. It's not ideal. It's certainly not preferred process, but we're trying to make the best of a difficult situation right now. We probably could have avoided it if we jumped on this back in 2018, but it's not the case. We're in a bind right now.
Yeah.
And so I'll be in front of you in a month.
Agreed and understood. Are there any questions to Chris from members of council? Is it possible to take the plan off the screen here so we can get the members a little more visible, all the participants?
I can.
That's better. Okay. I think I saw Councillor Powers' hand up first. Go ahead, Nick.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Chris, good to see you again. Just a couple of questions related to the presentation. I'm curious from the advisory committee's perspective in terms of powers and the longevity of the committee. Is the intention with the committee just to set it up to develop the plan and then it's sort of disbanded after that? Or is this something that is intended to continue on for the foreseeable future as a resource for the townships and the communities to leverage and benefit from in the long term? I'm just curious. And then I guess, what powers do they have? Is it strictly an advisory committee and there is real no power to mandate communities to initiate or implement some of these activities?
Through you, Mayor Taylor, this is mandated by the province to have these. Recently, they put out asking for feedback that it would be a 4-year review process for these plans. So we are mandated to have it. We are mandated to update it and manage it for the foreseeable future. The advisory committee, we adopted, or we agreed on, a terms of reference. And at this point, that advisory committee is in place to create the plan. And we agreed that we'll start working on it. And over the next few months, we'll see how that committee evolves. It was brought up at the Friday advisory committee meeting that there was certainly an appetite and a desire to maintain some sort of structure afterwards to work on the implementation. It's important to note the province is not providing any funding for implementation on this. However, it is within our diversity, equity, and inclusion officers' job description to help with the implementation, and as well, I will be involved. Those sort of things have not been hammered out quite yet, but certainly the experience of other municipalities, and I'm part of a network through the Ontario Social Services, the OMSA, the Ontario Municipal Social Services Association, dedicated to these plans. And many municipalities have found these to be excellent tools for bringing organizations together and collaborating and addressing community issues in a more effective way. And I would imagine if I was to predict that the province some years from now may create a funding envelope for this, and that if the city and the county were jointly putting in a funding application for something related to community safety and well-being, and it was within our plan, that they would look favorably upon that as well. Sorry, Nick. Sorry, Councillor Powers. The other question you had, the advisory committee is ad hoc. It doesn't have any standing authority or as a formal advisory committee. We did discuss that. The final decision lies with each municipality to adopt this plan. It's not to say we don't form one later, and other communities did form a formal advisory committees to council.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Deputy Clerk, I think you had your hand up. Bonnie, go ahead.
Yes, through the mayor, Chris, thank you for the great overview, and certainly that July 1st deadline, as you say, you'll be putting a plan together, and then it will be firmed up come the 1st of next year. So anyway, great work. There's a couple of things. I think with COVID, it certainly has made this approach even more critical than it would have been before, with all the isolation and mental health issues in every community. One thing I would like to know is measurables around this. When we get to the final plan, what kind of measurables do you anticipate will be part of the plan, so we know we're on the right track?
Through you, Mayor Taylor, well, the advisory committee is going to be deciding on those. Depends what strategies. Like this can't be 150 recommendations. This advisory committee needs to narrow down, pick what type of mental health issues, or if we're gonna, like, I could see mental health, I could see, opioid and drug addiction, drug misuse being issues. You can see in the rural areas, there'll be unique issues possibly related to transportation, employment, that townships are gonna have to provide the feedback on those priorities. And we're gonna have to develop those matrix based on those. I could go through many other plans and share with you examples, but that is definitely going to be one of the challenges. You know, you can look at homelessness and make several targets, and we're going to build on the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. We're not going to reinvent a plan that the city and county has already adopted. We're going to build on the drug strategy. We're going to, you know, build on the strategies that the OPP have in place, and try to build on them and work better together. So, and they all have outcomes as well. So how we improve, say, on community consultation and engagement with our residents, that'll be a challenge the advisory committee will have to tackle, but we welcome the input, and your conduit to the advisory committee is through Heather. And I'm always available too for discussing any details.
Okay, thank you very much. And I feel comfortable, you know, we can look also at police calls. Heather's certainly has always been part of that as well. So she has that knowledge base behind it. So I think we'll be well served. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Clerk. Chris, any other questions from any members of council on this one? As Chris said, there will be a plan coming forward for council to consider sometime soon. And Chris is quite right in saying that every municipality, as they adopt their own well-being plan, it will be, if you excuse the expression, tailored to fit the specific needs of that municipality. Well-being doesn't mean the same thing to everywhere. We have unique challenges depending upon your geographical locations and a number of other factors. So these are all considered as we're drafting our own well-being plan. So Chris, I don't see any other questions unless you have any further comments you want to wrap up with.
I will share just on the point that you were making, the format of the plan, depending on the unique challenges and things that each township brings up, the plan will reflect rural actions and rural priorities, and however best they can be reflected, whether each township has a separate section, or if you know, because I don't think all of the city challenges are applicable necessarily to rural challenges and vice versa. So we will be working to reflect the rural priorities versus the urban priorities the best we can. I'd also say Heather did say she wanted to call it the Taylor Plan, but that didn't go over. It didn't fly.
Right. Thank you. And I'm not surprised. I expected it, but I'm pleased to hear you mention that the rural component is considered. It has to be part of any rural well-being plan, because our challenges aren't the same as what you're going to find in large urban centers. So council, again, this was really for information purposes only. I'd like a motion, please, just to receive it. And I see that by Deputy Clerk and second by Councillor Allen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate the updates, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, moving down now to 11.1. Staff reports. The CAO will give us an update on some departmental work plans. Turn it over to you, Greg.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I I think I'm off. Yeah, I'm off mute here. So these are departmental work plans that we have done for every department by every departmental director and manager. I'm not sure whether people have questions on it. What I wanted to do is, in conversation with the mayor, we want to caution some things. There may be some things contained, specific things contained within the work plans where individual members of council might have a conflict on. So we wanted to make sure that if you have any specific questions about some of these particular items, just to keep that in mind, so we don't inadvertently put individual members in a position that of potential conflict here. So, but I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if they have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer any. The plans really, come out of the principal strategic document that we use as our 2021 operating budget and capital budget. So a lot of these items roll out of that. And then as far as some of the priorities that we've set with council about some of the policy directions as well. So if council has any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any questions from members of council on this report? And as Greg said, the caution, if you're going to raise a particular item out of it, please let us know what it is first before we enter into a discussion. There's a lot of information there. Go ahead, Councillor Powers.
There we go. Yes, there is quite a bit of information there, and it's very helpful. So thank you, Greg, and to members of the senior management team who put this together, because it is very helpful to understand sort of all the balls that are in the air and plan for the rest of the year and even into early next year. I am assuming that when we put in these timeframes that we're feeling fairly confident in terms of the timeframes, because that's the one thing that stands out right away, I think, and Greg's nodding his head, is there's a lot on this list. I mean, when you go from one department to the next, there's a lot of things on the list. And some of them you immediately wonder, can these actually all be achieved in the time frame? So obviously there is some fluidity, I suspect, to it, just like any other work plan. Things come and go, and they may not be sort of in line with are these sort of, I guess you could say, expectations and hopefuls based on what we know today, and what we see as the sort of projected completion date for some of these initiatives, which some of them are obviously very large. That's sort of the opinion right now, is where we would land in terms of completion if everything stayed the way it was. Is that fair to say?
Councilor Powers, yes, that is very fair to say. The majority of them are, as I said, are items that have come out of our budget or our capital budget. So the individual, so I've done a sort of a global one for as a CAO. The individual work plans are all done by the directors, right? So they are the ones that are putting these out there and said, this is what's in my scope of work for this particular time period going into 2022. And with all things being equal, and God willing, we're going to try and we'll get through the good majority of these particular items. That's the first comment they'd make. And the second comment is it's meant to be a good reflection for council. So when somebody asks an individual member of council, so what is Public Works doing or what is Recreation doing, you'd be able to say, well, I've got a work plan. These work plans will go on our municipal website, right? To show they'll be released publicly as well. And then the third thing is that it also acts as for us when we have our conversations and say and new items emerge, then the conversation becomes, okay, if you want us to take on a new project or whatever, or a new initiative, does one come off the list? Right. So those are the three pieces that I can sort of respond back to your council.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Greg. And the only other follow-up question I had is just maybe to Heather, it might be, or to Greg, either one, is around the council chamber sort of quasi renovation. I didn't see that in the list with regards to the additional monitor / TV component. I didn't see that one. Maybe I missed it because there is quite a few, but is that one on the list?
It's still our intention. It's in our capital budget. It's still our intention to do those things, because if you look in there's also live streaming and a few of those things on the list, right? Which are dealing with the we're gonna try to do a few of those things and see where we get to, and but that's our goal. We're gonna try and get some of that out for RFP and get that work done.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Any other questions to Greg on this update? Go ahead, Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, through the mayor. First of all, to our CAO, I am really pleased it's going to be on the website. I think that's really positive, Greg, for residents to see. Sometimes I think they wonder what's happening and think we're all sitting around maybe doing nothing. So my other thing was certainly like the color coding of things, done, finished, in progress. How often will we get an update on the plan to know if we're on schedule on that? What is your
That's a Deputy Mayor, Mr. Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor. That's a great question. So what I do is I review these documents with each SMT member every month. And then we can probably provide you with an update in a couple of months to give you guys since we're into May, I wanted to get this out sooner with the COVID situation. So late getting to those, but we're not late getting on projects. That's the thing, right? So we've been out of the gate with fire halls and fire trucks and dump trucks and all that sort of stuff already. So, so that we can look to do something probably for the August council meeting, and then maybe something in October. It would be my sort of preference, and that'll give us an opportunity to review with you, some of the construction things that we have planned for public works and roads. The other thing I do is I take that when we do performance reviews with the senior management team members, this particular one-page document is reviewed at that particular time, and it becomes fixed to the back side of their performance review that's done by myself. Right. So again, it becomes a bit of a living document going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's great.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Any other questions from members of council? And I'm not seeing any. Again, Greg, this is just simply a receive for information, an update received for information, correct?
Yes. Sir.
So I would like a motion to do just that if I could. I'm seeing Councillor Howie and Councillor Allen. All in favor? That is received for information. Thank you. Okay, there's also a verbal report from our CAO on the Birdsall line. Greg, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the reason that there's not a written report is we got a call middle to the late last week, and from our neighbors in Asphodel Norwood, and so we do a fairly significant amount of construction work on boundary roads. Birdsall line is one of them. They had made arrangements to do a maintenance hard surface, like one coat of hard surfacing on Birdsall, and typically what happens is that when they do that, since it's a shared road, we typically share the cost 50-50. So we weren't made aware of this until last week, and so they'd like to go ahead in this construction season to do this. Our share would be $30,000, and so what we have just received notification regarding in the last, I'm going to say, month, is we've been informed that we have a doubling of our gas tax grant that we're going to get to the township, and so we have the ability to. This was not in our capital budget, but we do have the ability to utilize our gas tax funding to pay our $30,000 share. So I wanted to bring it forward to council. I, along with Mr. Nelson and Heather Scott, have had the conversation about this, and would be making, and as well our treasurer with Jocelyn, making the recommendation to council that we utilize $30,000 out of our gas tax funding, and advise Asphodel Norwood that we would be in a position to have that work done in the 2021 calendar year. So that's our update.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And I'll just make the point for members of council that typically Asphodel Norwood and any other of our neighboring municipalities are very good at advising us well and ahead of time of their intentions on expenditures of boundary roads that will include us. In this case, unfortunately, it just slipped through the cracks due to some staff changeover at Ashfordale Norwood, and we always blame COVID on things, and it generally wouldn't happen this way. We'd have received lots of notice. But unfortunately, in this case, this has come up very late in the game. So questions? I think I saw Councillor Allen's hand up first. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple questions on the process of boundary roads. Maybe I'm just not quite informed on it. With regard to handling of the work and that way they are a boundary road, how does that work? Basically, I was wondering, like, does you know, like, are they, for example, the Birdsall line, is that a road that Asphodel Norwood would always take the lead on and make those decisions and then come to us? And I was just wondering that. And a second question, and I can ask it now, is just what the expectations are on the gas tax as far as the amount that we might receive. I don't know if we have any, if we know what that is or not. Thanks.
Through the mayor to Councillor Allen. So the typically we sort of share the responsibility about who sort of goes and who puts up their projects forward. There's usually a conversation that will happen between the two neighboring municipalities, and they'll say, you know, we'll take the lead on it. We'll put it, you know, we'll issue the tender. We'll do those sort of types of things. And so in this particular case, Asphodel would take the lead and you know, give you an idea. When we did some of the brushing and ditching work along Cameron Line, and that we were the ones that did that particular work. And then they did some work in another part of the municipality where we also had an adjacent road. So we would have shared some resources in a different fashion and doing it that way. As far as the gas tax, the doubling of the gas tax, I believe, and I looked at either Jocelyn or Heather, I think our annual share is about 254,000 or something like that, somewhere in the neighborhood of. So this year we're getting double that, and so they've doubled up on our contribution. So it's somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'd stand corrected here, Jocelyn, if you have that number at your fingertips.
Right? The top up is 203,000.
Okay. So I was a little higher than that.
So Mark, does that answer your question for you?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, for example, Greg, Division Road is another boundary road that we share with Duro Dummer. And I believe in that case, we have an agreement whereby we maintain a section of it, and that's identified between the addresses, and then Duro Dummer maintains an equivalent length. And that's how we deal with it there. So there's different agreements with different neighboring municipalities, but typically that's how it works. Heather's just sent us something on the chat line. We have agreement with Asphodel Norwood for winter and summer maintenance. I'm seeing there's a couple of hands went up. I know Deputy Clerk, I saw yours. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, through the mayor. So one question was answered, and thank you for that, Jocelyn. I was wondering what the top up was. So a little over 200,000. The other question, and we may not know the answer, I think with some experiences we've had, not on our roads, but county roads around resurfacing. Do we know the firm that is going to be doing this resurfacing?
I have not spoken with them specifically. Heather, I'm not sure whether you are aware of that firm.
And that's certainly a fair response. I would ask that if we could seek out that answer and just put it, if you could just email counselors on who it is, it would maybe let me sleep a little better at night.
I believe it's Miller, but I'm not 100%.
Oh, that was music to my ears, being a past Miller.
Well,
I hope so.
Obviously, it's Asphodel Norwood's decision.
Yes. Yes,
certainly we're going to be paying for some of it, so we're entitled to that information.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think I saw Councillor Howie's. Ken, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a question on regards, how does that road compare to the other roads in our township about maintenance, what is required at this point? is it needing repair or top coating, or is it, where it's just because the other half is being done, we're gonna do both sides?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Howie, I guess it's a combination of both of those things. So they do, so this is a maintenance single layer topping of that road. So that road would have been reconstructed a few years ago. So what they're doing is they want to add to the longevity of the road from a maintenance perspective. So that's what we do. And so that's the answer to that particular question. How it ranks with other roads in the township, because it's a boundary road, we both have a responsibility for that. And I'd hate to see, unfortunately, I was involved in a municipality before where the two neighbors couldn't agree and our municipality paved half of a road. And I don't think that that's a really good thing for the taxpayer to get into those types of situations. So we do have our own set of roads that are classified and that need maintenance. And so we'll follow those through singularly with council and through the roads needs study. But it's just when we get into these combinations about boundary roads, about where does it fit in our neighbors' plans and where does it fit in our plans? So we're comfortable with what has been recommended here. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay,
Thank you, Ken. And just for council's information, in case anybody isn't aware of it, Birdsall Line gets a lot of traffic. There is a sizable resort on our side of the road, right at the bottom end. Now, when that resort is allowed to open, it's a busy place. So this road does lead to a fairly good sized resort in our township. Any other questions from members of council on this one? So Greg, you're looking for a motion that we approve the unbudgeted allocation of approximately $30,000 to assist in the resurfacing of Birdsall Line. Is that correct?
From the gas tax fund.
And those funds be taken from the gas tax. Okay. Is anybody prepared to? Councillor Howie said he'll make that motion. I see Councillor Powers will second it. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Okay, moving down now to 13.1. We only have one planning application with us before us tonight, consent file B1621. And I'll turn it over to our planner, Ken Scullion. Good evening, Ken.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. This is severance application B-16-21 for the lands addressed 3511 County Road 2. Subject property is located at the southeast of intersection Lakeside Road and County Road 2. The subject property is currently used for agricultural purposes. On the proposed severed lot, there's a barn, a detached dwelling and outbuildings with a detached dwelling, barn and outbuildings existing on the proposed retained lot. The proposed severed lot is approximately 40 hectares and the proposed retained lot is approximately 70 hectares. The purpose of this application is to create an agricultural lot on a previously merged property that was merged by the Land Registry Office without an application from the current owner. The merging of the properties occurred after Keendale Lodge Farms purchased the abutting lots in 1973. Of particular note, the Township Official Plan, Section 4.2.1H provides permission for merged lots, which formerly existed as separate parcels, which have merged due to common ownership, are allowed to be severed. We believe that a rezoning is not required as the subject property is zoned rural, which permits agricultural uses and detached dwelling, which are the existing uses. This is consistent with the rural land use designation of the subject property. I believe that's about it. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Very good. Thank you, Ken. Any questions to members of council on this application? It's not often, Ken, that we get an application where it seems to conform to everything, even the rezoning. So yeah, seems pretty straightforward. Questions or motions I'd entertain? Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
Yes, I'll certainly make the motion. And for the fact that the landowners did not ask for this merger, it was put together unbeknown to them. So are there, I guess we'll get the motion through and then I'd like to ask a question following up. So I'll certainly make the motion.
Well, is the question related to the recommendation of the report? Deputy Clerk?
No, in generalization in the municipality.
Okay, all right. So Deputy Clerk has made the motion that consent file B61-21 be approved. And there's only one condition. So the approval is subject to one condition, which is $1,000 cash in lieu. Somebody wanting to second that? Councillor Allen has seconded it. Now we're going to, sorry?
Excuse me, to the mayor, I believe it's 1,500, is it not?
I've got $1,000 here. What is it, Ken? The cash in lieu?
$1,000, but the recommendation is to waive the $1,000 because the uses are existing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the recommendation is that the application be approved and the $1,000 cash in lieu be waived. And Bonnie, that's your motion? Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And Mark, did you second that? And you're seconding that motion. Okay, I'm glad we caught that one.
Thank you.
I'm going to call the vote first. All in favor? That is carried. Now, before we move on, Bonnie, did you have a question?
Just a general question, and maybe it will be Heather, having sat here the longest. Has this ever come about before, or are there a number of these in the municipality?
In terms of, through you, Mayor Taylor, in terms of having mergers happen?
Yes.
It has happened in the past a few times. We have had that. We had one on Television Road just after I first started. They come up every once in a while.
Yeah, unrequested.
Yes.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the landowner is not aware until they go to either sell.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. That's great.
The term I think is inadvertent merger, and I can tell you that this happens occasionally, and it's not the first one that I know that I've run into when I've sat in council. We run into them a lot at county council and the land division committee. So it's not,
but just I can, through the mayor, I only remember 2 or 3, Joe, in our own municipality like this.
and that could be. It's not the only one, is my point.
No.
It's
Yeah, but it's not a
common.
huge amount either.
No, but they're not discovered sometimes until well after the fact.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what, 40 some years after the fact.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that motion has been carried. Let me take myself off mute. I said that motion, that motion has been carried, and thank you very much, Ken. All right, going down now to staff reports, finance 15.1, and turn it over to Jocelyn on some financial reports in the department investments. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So our first quarter operating reports are here. Some items to note are arena revenue is down compared to last year, although we did fare pretty well with the COVID, still having people doing rentals. It is down compared to 2020, which isn't a big surprise. In our building revenue, we are up significantly from 2020, which I think also probably relates to COVID and all of the plans and projects that are going on. Overall, we're in a pretty good position in all areas. Does council have any questions in regards to the quarterly report?
So the quarterly report, there's Jocelyn, there's the finance report, the quarterly report, and the investments, right? So are you looking for questions on any of those at this time? Is there anything specific you wanted to talk about before we got to questions on those?
I don't think there's anything. I think you'll notice that in the fire operating, you'll see the revenue from the sale of Station 2 that is listed there. That in Q2 will be moved because it has been approved to be used against the cost of the new Station 2. And other than that, I don't think that there's anything unless council has any questions.
Good, thank you, Jocelyn. Any questions, Jocelyn, on the information here? Go ahead, Councillor Powers.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I do have a few questions coming from the report. Just in terms of, there's a few things that I guess you could say caught my eye, some numbers that caught my eye. If we look at public property, we've got 61% of our grounds maintenance cost has been accounted for in the first quarter. That seems unusual.
Yeah, it actually isn't unusual, Nick. Sorry. I looked at last year's as well, and it's a similar thing. So it looks as though the ground maintenance budget, so this year is at 61% in the first quarter. Last year it was at 68%. And when I look back at the notes as to why, it's being budgeted lower than it should be, it looks like. The cost seems to be mid 20,000 and it's only budgeted 10,000. So it's snow removal and things like that. Now, most of it does happen in the first quarter of this year and then some in the last quarter of Q4, but it does appear to be under budgeted.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind for budget season, I guess.
Yes, it's on my notes.
Okay, perfect. The next one I had was under general government. The insurance costs, we all know, the trials and tribulations associated with insurance, but it looks like we've paid the majority of it up front already. Is that a common practice where we pay that all in one rather than a month to month? We pay it all at once?
In my experience, municipal, yes, it's a yearly. Normally it happens towards the end of the year and it's set up as a prepaid expense. But in 2020, our expense actually didn't come in until 2021. So it's in its correct year. So yes, we pay a lump sum at the beginning for the entire year.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay. I've got a couple of other ones, but I'll let other council members have a chance to chime in. They may be having the same thoughts in some of my other ones. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Mayor Taylor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Other questions from other members of council? Anything at all? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Are we asking questions about investments as well, or is
Sure.
it just, yes, okay, just going into investments, we have a couple of our permanent, just bringing it up here, trailer parks who contribute every year. Could you tell me, those are held, I'm seeing Shady Acres and Kawartha Trails, and contribution of 7133. Can you just give me a little more information on what those reserve funds being held are for?
That I haven't had the chance to familiarize myself with as of yet. I know that the majority or all of the Kawartha Trails investments matured in 2020 and they were not reinvested. And the Shady Acres is left with the one at that 7,133. I'd have to look into that for you.
That's fine. If you could just email me, Jocelyn, that's fine. I think I know what it is, but I want to be sure. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think it would be fair to email all members of council.
Oh, excuse me. I meant that, Joe, to share with everyone. Absolutely. I'm sorry.
I had the same question. It looked like the responsibility agreement funds for Shady Acres went down substantially. And so it must just be a way that it's reported that's confusing. But if you look into that, Jocelyn, and in a subsequent report, you can certainly update us on that.
Yeah, and absolutely, and totally inclusive. I apologize if I worded that incorrectly. I meant for any questions I do ask, information for all. Yes, yes.
I know we're going to get back to Councillor Powers in a moment, once the rest of us have a chance, if there are questions. Anything to Jocelyn on this? Well, we'll turn it back to you, Nick. Go ahead.
Okay, just a couple of other ones. One was under the roads. thing that stood out right away is 171% of our brushing. And I see Jocelyn smiling. She knew that one was coming.
Yes.
And so I don't know, I guess it was just a busy year for brushing. That's, you know, whenever you hit 71% above, that's a good year. So I don't know if there's any explanation for that or if there's a reason.
What I know is that I don't know if it was Brian or Harold that told me, but council approved the roads department to use ditching budget towards brushing budget because they needed that to be done. So that's to the best of my knowledge at this time. Unless Greg knows something.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if you recall, we had the conversation last fall, and when Mr. McMillan advised council that he wanted to utilize less money on the ditching side and granular side and spend more money on brushing to get the brushing under control. And he advised council that that was the strategy, and council was made aware of that, both in 2020 and during the 2021 budget discussions.
Just if I may, just following up on that. Okay, I can see that now where the ditching line is at 0.3. We've spent $60 on ditching so far. So obviously, yeah, the money's been transferred and leveraged through the brushing. But I think even if you account for that, we've done quite a bit of brushing because that's, you know, that's over budget for the two lines, ditching and brushing. Is we've spent more than both of those combined already just on brushing.
Right,
and
so
so
we brush at certain times of the year, so we'll brush, right. and so we do the majority of our brushing during the winter into the spring months, and then late into the fall. So the majority of that work has already been done for 2021.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Greg, would any of that been captured, the cost of that been captured in the extensive brushing we did on Drummond Line? Because we contracted some of that out. Would that be part of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we did is, because we wanted to accelerate our brushing activities, we hired two private sector firms, so Treescape and the second firm. So one crew was working down Drummond Line. Some of them did into down to where the boat launch is in the Campbelltown Road. That same firm was there. They also did Blizzard Line and a few others. So there was a lot of brushing that was done in this particular, last 6 months.
Is that, Nick, does that finish your questions off?
I did have one more, but I suspect that the Deputy Clerk had a question related to what our topic that we're talking about, I think is what she was.
I see. Okay, go ahead, Bonnie. We'll go back to you.
Yes, through the mayor, and it is because I was just going to ask the breakout because I knew we'd done some contracting. So could we also have the breakout of the two contracts, the amount, if that could be emailed to council as well, or do you have it, Jocelyn, the amount of contract versus in-house?
I don't have, but because Drummond Line is a capital project, those funds will move from the operating in against the capital project.
Yeah, if you don't mind just emailing the brushing contracts.
It may, Mr. Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor, may not be available right away because we're going to have to do our full construction project on Drummond Line. So we'll be able to show that as a brushing line item. Okay, so it may not come here till the end of the summer, right? So once we get
okay, that's the Drummond Line, but certainly the contract for the other could come now. Okay, thank you.
If I can say so, I would rather have information like that come in the form of a subsequent report. It could be attached to a roads report at a meeting in the next 2 or 3 council meetings, just so that there's a public record of it, as opposed to emails sent to council members. So same with that financial information, Jocelyn. The next time you're bringing a report, if you could attach that information to it and get those questions answered, I think that's the best way to handle it.
I will do that right now. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Powers, back to you now.
my last two, I promise. The Clear Bags program, I'm curious if there's any impacts to our budget in terms of cost savings that could be. I know we've talked about this before, and I don't think there is any cost savings associated with it, but correct me if I'm wrong, Greg or Jocelyn, do we pay by the ton? And if we are reducing our tonnages to the landfill, do we have a net savings coming back, or how does that work in terms of what we see in our quarterly reports here related to that?
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna defer to Heather, because Heather's sort of one of our leads on the waste management side.
I don't think you're gonna see any cost savings rate yet until we get one full year in. I know we've seen some reductions. I haven't done an analysis yet to see if in fact up to this point we have seen realized any more available funds. So perhaps again, if it's a report that can come forward at a later date, we can sit down and analyze that a little bit better in more depth.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nick. You have one more?
My last question is the water line. I know there's probably a reason we have zero revenue for water. I'm just curious, in the first quarter, is it just the way the accounting happens?
I'm pretty sure, from what I know or understand, it happens with our final billing. So it will be in the third quarter that it'll actually show up.
Okay, I figured there was something like that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's comparable to last year.
With regards to the cost of waste collection, I don't know whether you'll see a reduction in cost for actual garbage pickup, but I do know that unfortunately we're going to see, and I think it's going to be a significant increase in the cost of recycling pickup. It's getting to be very, very expensive, as a lot of the commodities that are picked up have very little value. And we're struggling with this at the county, where they're trying to figure out the most cost-effective way to continue this program. So, you know, I don't know what the future is going to look like with regards to cost, but I know that the cost of recycling programs are only going in one direction. So with that, good news. I guess we've covered the financial reports. And if there's no further questions, I'd like a motion just to receive them for information. Deputy Clerk, Councillor Powers, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jocelyn. Okay, moving down now to bylaws, and we just have one before us tonight. I'd like a motion, please, that bylaw 2021-28 be read a first time. Got Howie and Alan, all in favor? That is carried. Heather, you could just please review this for us.
Bylaw 2021-28 is your dog control bylaw, which is revised. It's being a bylaw to provide for the licensing and registration of dogs and for prohibiting or regulating the running at large of dogs.
And the amendments to the existing bylaw were highlighted in yellow. If council look through that, you'll see it where there are only a few changes, but I guess Heather, really is just a little bit of updating and housekeeping is all it is.
Correct.
Any questions to the clerk on this bylaw? Go ahead, Councillor Powers.
It's not so much a question, just a comment. I think there's some wordsmithing. I'm sorry, I would have sent this in advance, Heather. I just noticed it when I reread it again tonight. On the actual Schedule A fee structure, under pickup fees, it states the dog control officer shall play pickup. I think that means shall pay pickup fees, or play, and not play pickup fees as set out below. I think it's pay. I don't know, maybe the dog control officer will play with the dog.
I know our dog control officer. I don't think so. It's just strictly an edit there, that's all.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the bylaw? Seeing none, then I'd like a motion, please, that bylaw 21-28 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached. That's moved by Deputy Clerk and a second by Councillor Allen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down now to correspondence. The first one is from the City of Barrie about a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline. Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Motion to support.
Support by Deputy Clerk. Do I have a second for that? Councillor Powers is seconded. Discussion? All in favor? That's supported. Thank you. Leamington, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Personal Protection Act. And I would like to ask our clerk, because this affects
Yeah.
the clerk's department more than period. Heather, what's your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I strongly agree, actually. They're quite right. The legislation is antiquated, it's out of date. What you find is the fee to file is $5. So somebody can, so we deem them as frivolous and vexatious. So somebody could file 15 different freedom of information requests, and they're only paying $5 a shot. It takes a lot of staff time sometimes. So it's very onerous procedure. It can be costly because sometimes I will actually go to the solicitor and say, can I give this information? So he'll look through it as well, just to make sure, because I have to go through and redact things. So it is quite onerous, it's extensive. So I strongly agree with this resolution.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk?
Yes, through the mayor, and thank you, Mayor, for asking that. I was going to get Heather's opinion as well. With one further question, I will move to support this. Do you get a lot of requests, Heather?
Not a lot a year. It depends. It depends. Some years I may get 3, some years I may get 0. It all depends on the nature of what they're asking for. But
Well,
sometimes they use that process to get information.
and before it gets to be a problem, I think it needs to be addressed. So certainly support. Thank you.
30 years is a long time, isn't it? So a Deputy Clerk has made the motion to support this. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Howie. So I'm going to read it correctly this time. The motion has been moved and seconded to support the correspondence from Leamington regarding the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This is exactly what I should have said the first time. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the town of Perth about funding for major capital equipment in hospitals. What's council's direction there? Councillor Powers.
Just based on what this is certainly not something that I'm all that familiar with in terms of the funding for hospitals, but reading through this, I would certainly be in support of something like this.
So you're going to move to support it. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Howie is going to second it. Discussion. No discussion. Call the vote. All in favor of the motion to support? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, where are we going now? Information package, County of Peterborough. This is strictly from information purposes only on the pilot project for a paramedic palliative care program. That's a bit of a mouthful. Any dialogue on this one? It's council. I'll tell you the concern with this. Because we've gone through this at the county with community paramedicine program. This is a pilot project that is very worthwhile. It has a proven record of success in some other municipalities, particularly the county of Renfrew. The problem with it is, and this is going to be the concern, is that it's a pilot project and the pilot project is being funded. Once you introduce this service into the emergency department, it will be nearly impossible to take it out, but there's no guarantee that the funding will continue. So that's the concern. And we're in a dilemma here. I mean, there's no way that we can say, oh, we don't support this. I don't think anyway. However, it could have some significant cost implications to everybody, all taxpayers in the county of Peterborough in the future if the funding isn't continued after the pilot funding runs out, because my guess is that the program itself will have to continue. So that's just a caution there. That's not asking for any direction or support from council. Just a heads up. And this is exactly what the concern is at the county. Any response to that? And if not, we're just going to move on. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk.
Just a motion to receive, and it's a concern with downloading. just like we
That's
have had
exactly-
lots of things that have been come down the tubes, and this may be another one, but it serves our residents very well. And that's what we're here for.
Exactly what it could well be is downloading. But Deputy Clerk has made the motion just to receive it for information purposes, which is all we do. And seconded by Councillor Powers. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Other matters, turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So had a conversation with Mayor Taylor. Just wanted to advise council that I had been approached a little while ago and asked if I would consider putting my name forward for appointment to the Board of Directors of the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association, OMAA. So this is the group of all the CAOs. This is different from the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, or AMCTO. And so last week they had their spring meeting and workshop and annual meeting. And I'm, I guess, pleased to share with council that I have been ratified at their annual general meeting to serve on the Board of Directors for OMAA for a 2-year period. So I just wanted to share that with members of council, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with that organization.
Very good. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Greg. I know that we have always at this township supported and promoted involvement with our staff in organizations that are part of their field, and this certainly fits into that. So I'm glad to see you at the table. I know you'll do a good job of representing our township and the interest right across the province in that.
So Mr. Mayor, I did remember the one item, and it's just an information item, if you would indulge.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. It came back to you.
Yeah. How could I forget this? So we issued our first building permits for Ambria at the end of last week.
Very good.
We are
Excellent.
very happy that there is housing construction that has occurred. They've paid their building permit fees. They've paid their development charges for the first 15 lots, and they're off and running. So we may see a subdivision agreement or a draft plan, a condominium agreement for phase 2 coming to council, hopefully for the first meeting in June. That'll be the next phase. So.
Very good. How many permits did they take out, Greg?
Pardon me?
How many permits did they take out?
I think we issued 15 to begin with, I think, and then.
Very good.
But there are still reviews going on for about, at least maybe as many as that, maybe as double as that for this particular phase. So the first phase has 47 units, and we're going to, it depends on how quickly they can build. I know they've got quite a few pre-sales going on there. So
very good. Okay.
So we've got building permit fees, and
go ahead, Bonnie.
Thank you. Backtracking to your appointment, I'd just like to make a motion of congratulations from council to you, Greg, on the appointment to the, and I want to get it correct, Ontario Municipal Administrators
Association. Yeah.
Association. So I think just for on the record from the council, congratulatory. It always serves any municipality well. I remember when our building executive director was certainly on the Ontario, and I know that our fire chief has served on those types of provincial. And so anyway, I'd like to make that motion of congratulations and on the record, Greg.
Okay, motion for Deputy Clerk that we offer congratulations to the appointment that our CAO has just described. And the seconder for that motion is Councillor Allen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the last one the Deputy Clerk wanted was an update on the EORN presentation that we were part of at County Council. I don't know, Bonnie, it was last week, was it, or 2 weeks ago? Anyway,
last week, it was more information really about the contract has been awarded and what's coming.
So Greg, I don't believe you were part of that meeting.
No,
so
I was on there. I was quiet,
Yes.
quiet
Oh,
as
you
a
were there.
mouse on
Okay.
there. Yes, I was.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what there is a a presentation that we could forward to other members of council if they didn't get it. Was that provided, you know, to them?
No, I don't believe it was.
No.
Okay, so we can
provided,
we
but
could
the
certainly
other
do-
question I would ask is, has it been circulated amongst us yet? So I haven't seen the presentation being circulated. It was just made at that evening, Mr. Mayor. So I guess what we can do is we can reach out to Eorn and get a copy of the presentation and circulate it amongst the council.
That's, I think, would be the best way to approach this. So is there anything else? It's an attempt by Eastern Ontario Regional Network to provide 1 gig of broadband coverage to 95% of Eastern Ontario. And it was interesting because we had the presentation at our township council meeting from that Cyrus, I think, from the representative from ExploreNet. And he was explaining the difference between fiber service and tower service. And what Eorn is proposing is to provide fiber service to all of the 95% of the homes and residents in Eastern Ontario, which is a game changer as far as broadband service goes.
So
It's
Mr. Mayor. So there's 2 projects that Eorn is advocating. One of them is this fiber to the house or fiber to the home. And the second one that they did the big presentation with us was upgrading cellular service across the whole coverage area of Eastern Ontario, and that they've awarded a contract to Rogers to upgrade all of their towers for their cell service so that will get rid of some of the gray and dark areas. So I know that that's the one that's coming out of the box now, and they're waiting for funding for the other project about fiber to the home and fiber to major communities. So
they did request support from the mayors of the various communities, and I have provided that from OSM, and I know that everybody did in the county of Peterborough. And we're just waiting now to see if the province and the feds pick up this particular project to support within the funding envelope that they provided. It'll be like all the other funding opportunities. It'll be oversubscribed, but we'll just wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, Greg, I think, is going to try to dig up the presentation, and he can forward it to other members of council. You can have a look through it for your information purposes.
I'll talk to Jim Pine and his
Mhm.
as well.
Well, we have it as part of our county council package, so the county have it, but yeah, I know you.
I don't know whether I don't know whether it was sent to us, Joe, but the clerk and I will check in.
Okay, go ahead. Bonnie, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, one of the questions I did ask was around sharing. I mean, I'm all for getting better service, but I'm also for making these proponents cohabitate. And Mr. Pine commented back was that it is CRTC mandated. So I found it very interesting. I've been emailing Greg back and forth a bit that I had asked ExploreNet when they come to our meeting if they had approached the proponent in Serpent Mounds, and they said yes, but they were not very receptive. So I'm wondering what kind of teeth the CRTC actually has. I just don't want to end up on making our landscapes filled with towers, and was pleased in that presentation to see it wasn't a huge amount of sites that they were proposing. But then again, what are the other ones if they aren't made to cohabitate? So it'll be interesting.
What I want to be careful, excuse me, what I want to be careful of here is getting into a discussion that's too meaty under other matters.
Yeah, so that's fair.
We don't have this on the agenda, so.
No, that's fine.
Certainly Greg or Heather will look up the presentation and forward to members of council. And when they read that, if they have some questions, they can ask the questions, or we can have another report on it at a subsequent meeting. Okay. All right. So that's all for other matters. We have nothing under closed session. We have nothing left tonight, ladies and gentlemen, but to adjourn. Councillor Allen, Councillor Powers, all in favor? We are adjourned. Mark, your coverage was much better tonight.